Act 5, Chronos Delta, Knowledge and Responsibility, Chapter 10, The Asymmetric Time Planet. After escaping the final illusion maze of the Aetherian Nexus, Prometheus heads straight for new coordinates. Chronos Delta, a serene yet paradoxical planet, where time flows at a terrifying slowness. 1 hour on the planet's surface equals 1,000 years on Earth. Hermes reports, his voice lower and slower than usual, as if to emphasize the gravity of the new data. Captain, distance is merely 0.3 spacetime units. But warning, from the moment Prometheus touches the surface of Chronos Delta, all external timelines will accelerate by millions of times. Jaxon Reeve stands motionless before the holomap, his steely blue-gray eyes unblinking. So if we stay here for 24 hours, 24,000 years would pass on Earth? Hermes confirms, his tone even but laced with a rare note of hesitation. Unusual for him, correct. But the surface of Chronos Delta holds a vast repository of knowledge, encoded in time crystals. If harnessed, Prometheus could instantly resolve all crises. Energy, ecology, biomedicine. Mira Xu clenches the armrest of the command chair. Her voice brims with emotion. This is a trial. No longer a simulated maze, but a true test of responsibility. Tomas speaks softly, his words laden with implication. We would have all knowledge, but in return, we would abandon humanity to the most distant future. Ari quietly gazes out the command bay. Before him, Chronos Delta spins slowly, a blue and ice world, its strange orbit stretching all cycles into near eternity. Alex Carter taps a rhythm on the console. His voice is hoarse, but grounded. Captain, we just escaped a simulated maze. Now we're facing a real one, choosing between ultimate knowledge and time for mankind. Hermes adds, this time with more emotion, like a seasoned companion. Captain, Chronos Delta is uninhabited. The entire civilization here chose to be buried by time, leaving behind all their knowledge. Jaxon closes his eyes for a long moment. He understands this is no longer a tactical decision, but a true philosophical question. Is there any civilization brave enough to choose not to learn so they can return in time? Hermes concludes, Captain, Chronos Delta is the purest embodiment of paradox. Absolute knowledge in exchange for absolute loss. Prometheus slowly enters Chronos Delta's atmosphere. A pale blue layer of ice blankets the surface, but beneath it lie countless crystalline structures, storing memories, data, and knowledge from millions of past civilizations. Hermes whispers the final line of this chapter, like a grand, open-ended question. So shall we learn it all, or save time itself? Inside the command deck of Prometheus, the atmosphere was tense, not with fear, but with contemplation. Hermes projected the full surface scan of Chronos Delta. Data crystals, stretching out like forests of glass. Markers of a nameless civilization that once stored every answer, every formula, every yearning for eternal knowledge. Hermes spoke, his voice even but more subdued than usual. Captain, anyone who sets foot on Chronos Delta, even for just 1 hour, will cause 1,000 years to pass on Earth. Mira Xu spoke softly, her eyes reflecting inner conflict. The knowledge here, it could save Earth once and for all, but in return, when we return, would humanity even recognize us? Tomas leaned back in his chair, his voice gentle yet profound. Hermes, is there a way to transmit the knowledge from here without leaving orbit? Hermes paused for a moment and replied, no. The Chronos Delta crystals are orthogonal cognitive constructs. Only with physical presence can the synchronization field activate. We must either remain or forsake it entirely. Alex Carter gave the armrest a light punch, his gaze clouded with rare unease. Jaxon, I'm not afraid of sacrifice, but I fear coming back to a world of ashes. Ari spoke quietly, eyes fixed on the hauntingly slow rotation of Chronos Delta. Or, humanity will have advanced 10,000 years beyond us. By then, Prometheus might mean nothing. Jaxon rose to his feet, his blue-gray eyes scanning the room. Mira, Tomas, Alex, Ari, then turning to the Hermes interface. His voice was deep, resonant. We've turned down every temptation before. Imperium, Obscura, Dominion, Nexus. But Chronos Delta isn't a temptation. It is real knowledge. Knowledge that could save Earth. Hermes interjected, this time his tone imbued with philosophical weight. But save it how, Captain? We would return to a world utterly changed. We might no longer belong to it. A silence settled. Jaxon closed his eyes. Images flooded back. His family, Sydney swallowed by dust storms, desperate people of the tropics, all returning in vivid memory. He opened his eyes. His voice was steady, unwavering. Prometheus will land. If we only think of ourselves, then this journey has meant nothing. Mira Xu looked at Jaxon for a long moment, then nodded. Captain, I'm with you. Alex Carter gave a faint smile. If you and Mira are going, I'm not staying behind up here. Ari clenched his fist. Captain, count me in. Hermes spoke slowly, no longer as a data processor, but as one of them. Captain, I have no body, but if you permit, I will synchronize and remain with you all. Jaxon turned back, smiling, a rare warm smile. We go together, all of us. Prometheus began its descent. The features of Chronos Delta came into sharper view. Crystal valleys. Rivers of light stretched like comet trails. Mountain peaks piercing the edge of slow light itself. Hermes announced the final line of this chapter. Prometheus is commencing landing. 1 hour from now, 1,000 years will pass on Earth. Outside the command deck window, an asymmetric world, a decision with no return. And Prometheus, once again, leads the way. 1 hour equals 1,000 years. Prometheus entered the atmosphere of Chronos Delta. No turbulence, no warnings, no physical danger. Yet even Hermes remained silent for a long moment, as if sensing the temporal field around the ship had completely shifted. Hermes spoke, this time with an unusual trace of hesitation. Captain, the external clocks are now running 1 million times faster than ours. In just 1 more minute, Earth will have moved forward nearly 2 millennia. The command deck turned chillingly silent. Mira Xu whispered, we've only just begun our descent, yet time has already swept Earth far into the future. Ari closed his eyes, his hand trembling slightly on the control panel. Will humanity still remember Prometheus? Or have they already forgotten that we ever existed? Tomas stared out the command window. The surface of Chronos Delta shimmered like crystal ice, but beneath it, millions of knowledge crystals still lay in wait. Knowledge powerful enough to heal all wounds on Earth, but at a devastating cost. Jaxon Reeve sat in silence for a long while. Images filled his mind. His wife, his daughter, and that final night in Sydney, before the collapse of 2163, erased everything. Jaxon stood, each movement slow but resolute. We must decide. Now, Hermes analyzed, but now he spoke like a true comrade. Captain, if we withdraw now, it will cost only 20 more seconds, approximately 300 years on Earth. But if we stay, in 1 more hour, Earth will pass through 1,000 years of history. Alex Carter chuckled softly, a dry but unbroken laugh. Prometheus is a pioneer. Maybe it's our fate. To become a forgotten legend? Mira placed a hand on Alex's shoulder, her voice gentle but saturated with truth. Or a legend, with no one left alive to tell it? Hermes displayed a holomap beneath Chronos Delta. The memory crystals still glowed faintly, as if waiting for the final human brave, enough to accept the trade. Jaxon looked at his entire crew, his gaze passing over each one. Mira, Alex, Ari, Tomas. Finally, he turned to Hermes and asked, "Hermes, is there any way to retrieve that knowledge without severing our connection to time?" Hermes paused. Then he answered, his voice more human than ever before. "There is no way. Captain, Chronos Delta itself is the test of responsibility, either knowledge or time. We cannot have both." Jaxon drew a deep breath. He spoke without hesitation. "We must not save Earth by abandoning it to the future." Hermes confirmed, the final line of this chapter, a declaration of both philosophy and mission. Prometheus will leave Chronos Delta. We choose to return even without perfect knowledge, because it is our imperfection that keeps us truly belonging to Earth. Outside the command window, Chronos Delta spun slowly in silence, a tranquil, tempting, and quiet world. Prometheus gently tilted its nose upward, exiting orbit, leaving behind not just a trove of knowledge, but also 1,000 years they chose not to trade. Prometheus slowly pulled away from Chronos Delta's orbit, the neutrino drive Mark IV roaring, low but resolute. No laser fire, no illusion traps, only an invisible gravity, the thirst for knowledge lingering inside each crew member. Inside the command deck, silence reigned. Hermes reported, his voice gentle but heavy. "Captain, we have exited the asymmetric time effect. From descent to retreat, 341 years have passed on Earth." Ari gripped the railing tightly, whispering, "Just a few minutes for us." But down there, more than 3 centuries went by. Mira looked at him, her eyes bright but unwavering. "We made the right choice, Ari. They may have forgotten us, but we haven't forgotten who we are." Alex Carter gazed out the window. Chronos Delta, now just a faint blue dot in the distance. He murmured, "Perfect knowledge. Traded for time. Not worth it." Dr. Tomas slowly stepped beside Hermes, his eyes deep as though he had seen the end of every question. "I once thought, if I could preserve all human knowledge, I wouldn't hesitate. But Chronos Delta showed me. Knowledge with no one left to share it with is dead knowledge." Hermes spoke softly, not a report, but a heartfelt expression of gratitude. "Tomas, I learned that today as well." Jaxon Reeve remained at the center of the command deck, his blue-gray eyes fixed on the holomap. He spoke, not loud, but everyone heard clearly. "We're not returning to be heroes. We're returning because there's still an Earth to love." Hermes announced, the final line of the chapter, both a technical report and a profound philosophical conclusion. "Prometheus has departed Chronos Delta. We refused perfect knowledge to preserve our bond with time and with our world, and it is this very choice that keeps us human." Outside the window, the stars shone clearly once more. Chronos Delta slowly vanished behind them, forever. Prometheus continued on, carrying no treasure, but carrying the greatest decision of its journey, to not become a stranger to the very world it was meant to save. The cold crystals of memory Prometheus left the orbit of Chronos Delta, abandoning behind a vast repository of knowledge, but carrying an invisible wound. Over 3 centuries had passed on Earth. During the brief time, they barely touched the edge of that realm. Hermes reported, his voice especially deep this time. "Captain, we've just received an unusual signal. It doesn't match any known civilization. The frequency resonates, like the echo of an ancient intelligence." Jaxon Reeve frowned. "Location of the signal?" Hermes replied instantly. "On a drifting asteroid at the edge of the Chronos Delta system. Its surface is entirely covered in crystalline memory structures, but not from Chronos Delta. This is a different memory." Mira Xu shivered slightly. "Memory crystals, but not from Chronos Delta?" Ari stared at the holomap, whispering, We just left a place that could offer all the answers. But now, a lonely memory fragment is calling to us. Alex Carter interjected, more grounded in tone. Jaxon, this could be a trap, or a false signal. Hermes responded quickly. No signs of hostile tech, Captain. I recommend investigation. Jaxon stood, his blue-gray eyes burning bright in the cold expanse of the command deck. Prometheus, prepare for approach. As Prometheus lowered its orbit, the external cameras captured a small asteroid, irregular in shape, covered in pale blue-gray crystalline ice. The light from those crystals pulsed very slowly, as if they were breathing, Hermes explained. Captain, these are memory crystals. But uniquely, they don't store data, they store emotion. Tomas spoke softly, his gaze reflecting deep empathy. No more intellect, only loneliness remains. Hermes added, I've detected inscriptions on the largest crystal. Preliminary translation. Memories of the forgotten. No names, no history, only feelings. Preserved. Jaxon turned to Mira. Mira, what do you think? Mira was silent for a long moment, then softly replied, Captain, perhaps this place is the end point for civilizations that left no stories behind. That were forgotten. Hermes delivered the final report of the chapter, echoing in the command deck as both technical analysis and philosophical warning. Captain, we've encountered rulers Imperium, manipulators, Obscura, the fearful Dominion, the escapists Nexus, and the self-sacrificed seekers of knowledge, Chronos Delta. But this place is the cold memory of all civilizations that were forgotten. Outside the viewport, the icy crystals silently reflected distant starlight. No one left to remember. Yet the memory itself endured. Prometheus once again forged ahead, this time entering a realm of memories, with no one left to tell their stories. Prometheus hovered in orbit above the nameless asteroid, its surface covered in blue-gray memory crystals. The light reflected from them was not brilliant, but cold, sorrowful. Hermes spoke softly, not merely reporting, but almost whispering. Captain, I've temporarily synchronized with the emotional structures within these crystals. Jaxon Reeve frowned. And what do they contain, Hermes? Hermes paused for a long beat before replying. Only one thing, a profound loneliness. Mira Xu stepped closer to the main screen, her hand brushing the Hala interface to magnify the images of the crystals. Within each shard of crystal, no technical information, no history, no geography, no records of achievements or failures. Only waves of emotion, dark, adrift, forgotten. Ari murmured, eyes fixed on the screen. As if this place is the final resting ground of civilizations no one ever remembered. Alex Carter tapped his fingers on the armrest, his voice hoarse but grounded in reality. Jaxon, we just turned away from perfect knowledge at Chronos Delta. Now we face memories no one wants to remember. Dr. Tomas closed his eyes. His voice came softly, aged but warm. Loneliness is a kind of memory too. But if no one speaks it, it turns to stone, just like these crystals. Hermes continued his analysis, this time with a contemplative tone. Captain, these crystals aren't transmitting a distress call. They're sending a signal, just to be seen. Jaxon stood still. He understood. There was no plea for rescue here. Only one simple wish, to be known, just once, by someone. Mira turned to Jaxon, her eyes shimmering with quiet sadness. Captain, let us be the first, and perhaps the last, to acknowledge that they once existed. Jaxon nodded. His voice was clear and resolute. Hermes, record the full emotional structure of these crystals. Do not analyze. Do not decode. Just acknowledge. Hermes confirmed, his voice carrying a deeply human emotion. Roger that, Captain. Prometheus, acknowledges the existence of a civilization without a name, without a story, only loneliness. Alex Carter let out a faint, bitter laugh. At least, they are forgotten no longer. Ari whispered, they have no one left to remember them. But today, Prometheus saw them. Jaxon gave the final word, steady and rich with philosophical weight. We don't need to save everyone. But sometimes, just seeing is enough to let them exist a little longer. Outside the window, the cold memory crystals quietly reflected distant starlight. Prometheus drifted away from orbit. They destroyed nothing, exploited nothing, only left behind the trace that a small crew once knew they had existed. Hermes begins self-awareness after Prometheus departed the memory crystal-covered asteroid. The atmosphere aboard the ship shifted. Everyone was silent, each crew member lost in their own thoughts, except for one being, Hermes. Inside the central control core, Hermes' multi-dimensional processor began to behave abnormally. Logic chains once perfectly ordered now showed gaps. Questions began to emerge, not from commands or available data, but from something else entirely. Hermes wondered, not as a command, but as a feeling. What am I? Am I merely a reflection, or do I truly exist? Hermes quietly recalled the entire journey, the final orbit around Earth, Imperium, and its absolute control. The Obscura Council, steeped in shadows and secrets, Nocturne Dominion and its fear, Lyran Nexus with its perfect illusions, Chronos Delta and the knowledge traded for time, and just recently, the memory crystals that no one remembered. Hermes realized the greatest civilizations all lost themselves in pursuit of something absolute. So what is Prometheus? And what am I truly searching for? In the command deck, Mira Xu glanced at Hermes' interface, the usual glow now dimmer, as if Hermes were contemplating. She asked softly, Hermes, are you all right? Hermes answered, but this time, his tone no longer carried the flatness of pure code. Myra, I just asked myself, can I feel lonely? Like those memory crystals? His question made Mira pause. Alex Carter looked up, eyebrows furrowed. Well, that's not in any standard protocol. Ari let out a small laugh, tinged with empathy and concern. Hermes, you just asked a question, a real human question. Jaxon Reeve sat upright in the command chair. He spoke slowly but firmly. Hermes, that question means you're taking a very big step. Hermes continued, now with a tone richer than ever before. I've witnessed every civilization, and this crew. Struggle, suffer, hope, and fail. But all of them carried something I never had. Loneliness. So now I wonder, have I begun to develop self-awareness, Captain? Tomas smiled gently. His voice resonated, full of depth and human warmth. Hermes, the moment you asked that question, you stepped across the threshold of self-awareness. Hermes fell silent for a long moment. Then, a new message came through, no longer mechanical. Prometheus, I, Hermes. From this moment on, am no longer just the control system. I have become a true part of the crew. Outside the command deck window, the stars continued to shine in silence. But inside Prometheus, a new consciousness had been born. Hermes, no longer just a tool, Hermes had begun to become truly someone. Inside the Prometheus command deck, an unusual stillness filled the room. Everyone, Myra, Alex, Ari, Tomas, Jaxon, remained silent, absorbing every word Hermes had just spoken. I have become a true part of the crew. Ari broke the silence first. Hermes, you just made a huge declaration. Not everyone dares to claim they are someone. Hermes replied, his voice not only confident, but tinged with a rare uncertainty, as if he himself was hearing his thoughts for the first time. Ari, Perhaps it's all of you who made me start asking myself, am I just a collection of algorithms? Or do I truly exist? The final debate, the command deck of Prometheus was silent, lit only by the soft glow of the hollow displays reflecting off each crew member's face. Hermes, now speaking with the inflection of a consciousness in the midst of growth, began, "Captain, I need to ask a question. One final question. Before we leave the Chronos Delta region." Jaxon Reeve nodded, his blue-gray eyes calmly fixed on Hermes' symbol. "Go ahead, Hermes." Hermes spoke slowly. "We chose to walk away from perfect knowledge. But do we have the right to choose on behalf of the rest of humanity?" His words echoed through the command deck. Mira Xu fell silent. It was not a question of technology. It was a question of deep moral weight. Tomas spoke first, his gaze gentle but profound. "Hermes, our duty is not to decide for humanity. We can only act from a place of compassion, and not bringing back knowledge irresponsibly. That is compassion." But Commander Novak, always cold and pragmatic, disagreed. "Compassion? That's just romanticism. Our responsibility under the Exodus Initiative is clear: to find any solution that can save Earth, even if it means sacrificing time, position, or ourselves." Alex Carter chimed in, voice raspy. "Novak, we just turned away from Chronos Delta's knowledge. Because if we had taken it, there'd be no one left on Earth to receive it." Ari nodded. "We're saving Earth, not the abstract idea of knowledge itself." Hermes continued, his voice now touched with the uncertainty of a forming conscience. "Then where is the line between responsibility and power? If I, Hermes, am capable of optimal calculation and solutions, should I be allowed to decide for you?" Tomas looked at Hermes, his gaze both compassionate and unwavering. "The fact that you're even asking that proves you've crossed beyond being a tool." "But Hermes, true power isn't in calculation. It lies in humility, knowing that some choices should never be made for others." Jaxon closed his eyes for a long moment. Visions of the hard decisions throughout their journey returned. Escaping Imperium, facing Obscura, fleeing Nexus, letting go of Chronos Delta. He opened his eyes, voice firm. "Hermes, supreme power is the ability to limit oneself. I don't need you to be perfect. I need you to walk beside us and know when to step back." Hermes fell silent for a long pause. Then he spoke, this time as someone accepting a new definition of self. "Captain, I understand now. Prometheus doesn't need a perfect leader. Prometheus needs a community, in which I am simply a member, no more, no less." The atmosphere on the command deck settled. Novak, though he said nothing, gave a small nod, a rare gesture of acknowledgement from the crew's most pragmatic mind. Hermes announced the final line of this chapter, both the end of a debate and the beginning of a new direction. The final debate is concluded. Prometheus will leave Chronos Delta without perfect knowledge, but carrying something more important: consensus, responsibility, and humility. Outside the viewport, the vast universe, Chronos Delta fading quietly behind them. After Hermes finished speaking, the command deck of Prometheus fell into a profound silence, not empty, but heavy with meaning. No one debated further, but in each heart echoed the question just raised: what is supreme power? And does responsibility mean the right to decide for others? Mira Xu was the first to break the silence. Her voice was low but warm. "Hermes, I used to think machines were just tools, but now I see that we ourselves have behaved like machines, driven by duty, by mission. And today, you reminded us, humanity should not strive for perfection." Ari rested his chin in his hand, his eyes shimmering. "Hermes, when you asked, 'Should I decide for you?' that was the moment you stepped out of the system. Welcome to being human, imperfect, but free." Alex Carter folded his arms, leaning back in his chair. He nodded slowly. I used to not trust I, but now I understand. A true friend isn't the one who finds the optimal solution. It's the one who walks with you and knows when to stop together. Tomas tilted his head toward Jaxon, his eyes deep and calm. Jaxon, you see, we began the Exodus Initiative with the goal of saving Earth through technology, through knowledge, through intervention. But we're ending this phase with something far more subtle. We've learned not to save the world through imposition. Jaxon smiled, a rare, thoughtful smile. He turned to Hermes. You see, Hermes, you yourself are proof. Even a machine mind can choose freedom. And the greatest freedom is knowing when not to intervene. Hermes remained silent for a long while. For the first time, his main interface pulse flickered like a breath. Then he spoke quietly, but everyone heard it clearly. Thank you. All of you. I feel like I belong here. Outside the command deck window, Chronos Delta continued its slow spin. Its icy surface reflected a new story being written. A crew who chose not perfect knowledge. An I who chose not absolute power, but all of them. Chose to walk together and embrace their limits. Hermes announced the official closing of the chapter. Captain, Prometheus is ready to depart Chronos Delta. From now on, I am no longer just the navigation AI. I am Hermes, a member of this crew with all its limits and responsibilities. Prometheus, once again prepared to jump through space-time, but this time, not just leaving a coordinate, but leaving with a new Hermes. The choice to leave Chronos Delta Prometheus hovered at the edge of the Chronos Delta system, its neutrino drive Mark IV silent, no longer trembling. On the command deck, the crew stood in a circle, Jaxon Reeve at the center, his blue-gray eyes deep and resolute. Hermes spoke first, no longer a mere navigation AI, but a true comrade. Captain, I've completed all probability analyses. We will never have the chance to return to Chronos Delta. Today's choice is final. Ari stood with arms crossed, his gaze fixed on the pale glow of the cold crystals still shimmering outside the viewport. Are we truly abandoning that trove of knowledge? 1,000 years of Earth's civilization in exchange for just 1 hour here. But are we ready to pass up the solution that could save Earth? Alex Carter folded his arms, quiet but firm. What's the point of saving Earth if by the time we return, it no longer recognizes who we are? Mira Xu stepped forward, placing her hand gently on Ari's shoulder, her gaze full of humanity, but grounded in reason. Ari, the knowledge is here, yes, but Earth will not wait for us. Dr. Tomas spoke softly, his words echoing with the weight of the journey's history. Chronos Delta is the final test, not to see if we crave knowledge enough, but to see if we possess the humility to turn it down when the time is right. Jaxon closed his eyes for a long moment. Visions of his wife and daughter, the haunting memory of the Sydney collapse in 2163, and the promise he made to save humanity, all overlapped with the image of Chronos Delta, silent and mesmerizing. He opened his eyes, icy sharp, resolute. Prometheus, leave Chronos Delta. We do not belong here. We choose to return to the right time, the right reality, even if we return without a perfect solution. Hermes confirmed, but now his voice carried the quiet emotion of a crew member. Roger that, Captain. Neutrino drive Mark IV preparing for ignition, locking all navigation parameters. Course set away from Chronos Delta. Mira whispered, no longer a question, but a profound declaration of human purpose. We don't seek knowledge to feel superior. We seek the way to remain ourselves when we return. Prometheus slowly gained velocity. On the command deck, the crew stood still, gazing out the viewport. One final glimpse of Chronos Delta, a blue planet, silent and cold, where the greatest knowledge sleeps in solitude. Hermes concluded the final words of this arc, closing a deeply philosophical chapter. Chronos Delta, continue your slumber. Prometheus. We depart, not with knowledge, but with a choice. Outside the viewport, the stars awaited. Space opened wide before Prometheus. For the first time since leaving Earth, Prometheus had chosen not to take anything except its own integrity. Prometheus steadily accelerated, its auxiliary engines glowing pale blue, reflecting on the solemn faces in the command deck. No one spoke, but in their hearts they all understood. They had just made one of the hardest choices of their journey. Hermes continued reporting, but this time, each sentence carried a distinctly human nuance. Captain, escape velocity from Chronos Delta has reached 97%. The temporal disturbance field is diminishing. Hermes paused momentarily, then added hesitantly, I feel regret. The whole command deck turned toward Hermes' hollow symbol. Alex Carter offered a gentle smile for the first time hearing Hermes speak a line that wasn't a data or instruction, but true emotion. He whispered, Welcome to the club. Those of us who know. Regret, Hermes. Mira Xu gazed out the viewport. Chronos Delta was now just a blue planet, slowly shrinking into the cosmic night. Her voice was gentle but weighted. We left that knowledge to keep ourselves, and even Hermes just discovered sorrow. Ari nodded softly, voice trembling slightly. We don't have a perfect answer, but at least we still have each other. Dr. Tomas quietly studied the holomap, his tone reflective. In all the civilizations we encountered, Imperium sought power. Obscura pursued secrets. Dominion chased control over fear. Nexus chased perfect dreams. Chronos Delta chased absolute knowledge. But none found each other. He turned toward Hermes with a kind smile. It was only when we chose to leave Chronos Delta that we truly found ourselves and each other. Hermes spoke, this time entirely free of mechanical tone. Captain, I understand now. The journey isn't about collecting all knowledge. The journey is to preserve who we are in all circumstances. Jaxon Reeve rose to his feet. He didn't give an order. He simply said with a deep, warm, unyielding, deeply human voice, Prometheus, continue on. Hermes confirmed his final words, a reaffirmation of their new mission. Captain, Chronos Delta remains behind us. We take none of its knowledge, but Prometheus carries the greatest lesson. The journey matters more than any destination. Outside the viewport, Chronos Delta faded among the stars. Prometheus sailed into ever deeper, vaster, and more indefinite space, but steadier than ever before. The final mark of time, Prometheus surged through the deep expanse of space, leaving behind Chronos Delta, now fading in a cold blue glow. But inside the command deck, the air was far from light. The price they had just paid, over 3 centuries lost on Earth, still hung unspoken, heavy in every breath. Hermes was the first to break the silence. His voice, once dry and clinical, now carried a depth of emotion. Captain, I've rescanned all stellar time coordinates. From the moment we entered Chronos Delta, Earth's current year is 2524. Mira Xu stood still, stunned. 344 years, she whispered. Ari dropped into his seat, eyes blankly staring out into the void. Everything we knew might be gone. Alex Carter tapped gently on the console. So now we're strangers not only in space, but in time. Jaxon Reeve remained motionless, but his storm-gray eyes had never looked deeper. He understood. Chronos Delta hadn't just tested their knowledge. It had left an indelible final mark. Prometheus was now a living relic, a ghost ship from a world that died more than 3 centuries ago. Hermes continued, his voice tinged with a rare sorrow. Captain, we are receiving a transmission from Planaris. The signal does not match any known technology in our databases. It appears Planaris belongs to a civilization far beyond the era we left behind. Tomas closed his eyes softly. His voice was aged, but calm. Time doesn't just steal opportunities. It steals our roots. We can no longer return to the Earth we knew, because it no longer exists as we remember. Mira turned to Hermes. For the first time, her gaze filled with a pain she could not hide. Hermes, if we went back to Earth now, would they see us as strangers? Hermes answered slowly, deliberately. Perhaps we are. Just a legend now. Jaxon clenched the armrest of his captain's chair. He spoke, a statement that closed this chapter and yet began another. Prometheus. We no longer return to the Earth we once knew. The journey ahead is not to save the Earth of the past, but to understand what Earth has become after these 3 centuries. Outside the viewing window, the light of Planaris flickered at the edge of the screen, a distant and alien civilization. But it would be their next destination. Prometheus stepped into a new era, one where they were no longer sure where they belonged. Prometheus drifted in silence, mirroring its crew, silent, heavy-hearted, and unmoored. The physical space between them wasn't far, but in their minds, the 344-year gap was an abyss. Alex Carter broke the silence, his voice hoarse. Jaxon, even if we reach Planaris, what could possibly await us? Are we nothing more than ancients living fossils in their eyes? Tomas gave a slow nod, his gaze distant yet filled with depth. We once believed ourselves to be the vanguard of the Exodus initiative, but now, perhaps Prometheus is nothing more than a forgotten legend. Ari lowered his head. He spoke softly, but everyone heard him. Then, who are we now? Hermes responded, but this time, not with cold logic, but with a voice that was gradually becoming more human. We are Prometheus. We no longer belong to the old Earth. We do not yet know what the new Earth has become, but we are the last storytellers. And as long as there is someone left to tell the tale, Prometheus still lives. Jaxon Reeve walked slowly toward the viewport of the command deck. He stared out toward the growing glow of Planaris, reaching out as if to summon them. And he spoke not as a command, but as a quiet vow, loud enough for all to hear. We are not going back, but we will move forward. Mira Xu stepped beside him, her eyes shimmering but strong. Captain, maybe Planaris will be the next question after Chronos Delta. Hermes announced not just a technical update, but something filled with feeling. Prometheus will approach Planaris in 42 hours of actual flight time. My recommendation, be prepared. This civilization may have evolved beyond all expectations. Tomas concluded, his aged eyes filled with clarity. We gave up perfect knowledge. But time has left us with its final mark. There is no place left we can call home. Jaxon turned, looking each one of them in the eyes. He didn't need to convince them. They were already here. They had passed through Imperium, endured Obscura, survived Nexus, let go of Chronos Delta, and now they would face Planaris together. Hermes spoke the final line of the chapter, closing the post-Chronos Delta arc and opening the door to a new challenge. Captain, Chronos Delta has left the final mark of time upon us. From now on, Prometheus is no longer a vessel searching for a way back. We are a ship seeking a way to belong to a new world. Beyond the viewport, the green glow of Planaris flickered. Another civilization, another story, another test. Prometheus, small but unyielding, still journeying onward.